All right, you gloriously miserable accursed, we're back for our last show of week 1 of the 45th Canadian election campaign. Here with me to celebrate the occasion is Kory Teneycke, Jordan Leichnitz, Scott Reid, and the inimitable Nick Taylor-Vasey. Nick, how are you this morning?
I'm good. Can I just say that the 2 or 3 minutes before we start recording are better than coffee for me? Like, I mean, it's quite early, and that's not. Tim Hortons is down the street. I'm in no rush after this to get there. I'm kind of awake now, so thank you for that to all of you.
We're talking off mic about that orb behind you, and I think I've identified it. That's Marcellus Wallace's soul that was being transported in Pulp Fiction, is it not?
Oh, Christ. What nondescript hotel room are you in today?
I'm in the same as yesterday. The rare 2 in a row. I'm in Oakville because this morning I'm talking to. Here's a pop quiz. Which cabinet minister was going to run and then decided not to run and then decided to run again? Who's in this part of. Yeah. So Anita Anand will be across a table from me at a coffee shop. And I'm looking forward to that. And then I'm going to do the thing that we all love to do, which is to go to a suburb and listen to people talk about politics. I'm going to follow a candidate around Milton and see what they have to say. So I'm looking forward to that.
When are you going to start covering the campaign?
What are you talking about?
You're out there digging holes in the
Going
Democratic
around having
earth.
coffee.
Get with the conventional wisdom conversation that we're having.
Not just chasing the herd, Nick.
Did you forget the part where I beat the herd to all the most important places of the week? I don't know. Just saying. You want to know where the leaders are today?
I do.
Yeah.
So Mark Carney is in Montreal.
At a facility?
Actually, I don't know where he is, but he's in a room with a camera because he's going to have a virtual meeting with the premiers after his rally last night. And then he's going to get back to the campaign after that.
So, sorry, can I ask a question? So it isn't like full-fledged transition days. It isn't like yesterday was a day as prime minister. Today, because of the premier's meeting, is also a day as prime minister. It's 3 hours as prime minister, then back to the trail. And I'm not being facetious. I'm asking.
It's been a couple of days of that, right? Like he left being Liberal leader to talk about tariffs. Then he had a rally in Kitchener, and then he went to Ottawa to be prime minister, and then he had a rally in Montreal. And now he's going to be a prime minister with the premiers and then go somewhere we don't know yet.
It's actually really interesting, Scott. I'm doing a Chiefs hurly-burly today with Tim Murphy and Ian Brody and Brian Topp. And one of the things I want to talk to them about is the challenge of running an actual government from the plane, because it's highly unusual. Normally, the PMO is a complete afterthought in an election campaign. But in this one, you're actually having to be the government while you are campaigning.
Yeah, I had a conversation with Canadian Press yesterday about this very thing in 2004 when Paul had to stop to attend D-Day anniversary in the middle of the election. And actually, that gave us an opportunity as a campaign to retreat, regroup, and then turn the election around because we were losing at that point. So that foreign trip actually helped us a lot.
Yeah.
It helped me a lot in making the justification to break elements of the caretaker convention during a provincial campaign only a few short weeks ago. So thank you guys for that. That helped us with our campaign too. Look,
that was your cover.
The Liberals walk so the Conservatives can run.
Case law.
And what exactly? How mobile are the New Democrats?
Pretty mobile. They blew up their tour yesterday and put themselves in Windsor to talk auto jobs, which is more than we can say with for the Conservatives.
All right, Nick, back. What else is going on?
Jagmeet Singh, speaking of him, is in Toronto. We don't know a lot about what he's going to do, except that he has an announcement this morning.
He's dropping his resume off at various locations in anticipation of E-Day.
I so look forward to the mention of Jagmeet Singh every day. Just to hear
you do know one thing about the event. He'll be wearing a sweater.
You're wearing the sweater.
You know, it's sweater weather, you guys.
Yeah, why not?
You should wear a sweater.
There's an ice storm coming. I mean, that's sort of like weather appropriate.
I don't, want to give unwelcome advice because apparently.
No, that's not your thing.
Please,
so against the grain.
I don't do that.
We want to hear more of your advice.
I was going to suggest that a coffee shop that's open before 6 a.m. in downtown DC might be a potential opportunity.
Barista Singh.
Pierre Poilievre, he's on the West Coast, so he's in Nanaimo. and that is on Vancouver Island, which I think that party very much expects to be blue top to bottom. He's coming from Surrey, where he had an even larger rally than he had in Hamilton, which is impressive. And this is going to be the first time I mentioned the Green leaders, both of them, because they are both also in Nanaimo today to launch the campaign of Paul Manley, the former MP who's running again and hoping to take Nanaimo. So you've got not one, not two, but two plus three federal leaders in Nanaimo today.
I thought we said we weren't talking about the Greens. What made them pass the threshold on this?
I would say because Jonathan Pedno left Montreal and went to Nanaimo. Yeah,
okay.
I think that counts as a national campaign.
Look, I think when both halves of the leadership, join, like, I don't know, Power Rangers in a riding, then you got to talk about it.
Yeah, okay.
They become whole. They become the Megazord. Yeah,
right, exactly. It's like it's a giant green dinosaur that runs towards, I don't know what, the tar pit.
Now, Nick, if people were wise and after they finished listening to this went and read the Ottawa Playbook, which you write for Politico, what would they find?
Well, they would find out that I got the dream assignment yesterday and I went to the Blue Jays game specifically to listen for the booing of the U.S. national anthem.
All the toughest assignments for you.
I know.
Nick.
Can you believe my life?
It is a tough assignment to watch the Blue Jays this year. They're going to be awful.
Yeah, that was pretty hard.
My God, that was a stinker. That game sucked. But the Canadian anthem was cool. That was pretty fun.
And what was the booing to cheering ratio on the American anthem?
No cheering until the very end when they cheered like the Lion King cast, because it was actually a pretty stunning anthem. So I would say a smattering of boos. Like a solid smattering of boos.
I've noticed the same at events for the last while. I think the booing is largely stopped. Probably not if Wayne Gretzky showed up, but for the U.S. anthem, it's stopped.
It's like a weird energy it requires to boo that thing. It's a long anthem.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Nick. We've got important work here to do.
Yeah,
really is personal. It's between the four of us, so we need to focus in.
Yeah, no, I understand. I get to listen a couple hours later with the rest of the world. It's all good. It's all good. I'll see you next time.
After the campaign,
see you Monday, Nick.
Yeah, you
can petition for membership in the Justice Society at another time.
See you later.
So our polling is done by Polera Research, and it is brought to you by Enbridge Gas. Enbridge Gas, reliable, affordable natural gas to heat your homes and power our economy. Thank you, Enbridge Gas, for sponsoring our polling. And what do we have? We have now 4 days of roll-up, so that's 2,000 cases. And there is no change. 45 Liberal, 36 Conservative, 9 NDP, 5 Bloc, PPC 2, Green 2, 17% undecided. So that appears pretty stable, but we are tracking. So by Monday, we'll have dropped the latest day and added a new day. So there might be some change on Monday if something is happening out there. 2 little addendums to the polling today, one of which is Polera is testing how people are reacting to the leaders and what the leaders are saying. And among men under the age of 50, Poilievre is the most exciting and galvanizing leader. Carney's in positive territory, but Poilievre's in much more positive territory on that. Men 50 plus, though, Poilievre is underwater at a -3, and Carney is +22 among men over the age of 50. And among women under the age of 50, Carney is +22, Poilievre is -10. And among women over 50, Carney is +27, and Poilievre is -19. So that's if I can do math, ladies and gentlemen, that's a 47-point gap. 46 to be precise, among women over the age of 50 on how they are reacting to these two leaders. And perhaps
women have the vote in Canada, right? So that's a factor.
I think women over 50, yes.
Yeah.
That's right. Exactly. We'll be carefully checking their identification.
And Kory, let's get into it. Let's get into it right off the top. So Polera, intrigued by your interventions yesterday, checked their crosstabs, and they say in Ontario, among people who claim to have voted for Ford, 70% are voting for Poilievre, 27% are voting for Carney. You injected yourself into this campaign yesterday. Why did you do that?
A controversial conservative.
Well, I'm a conservative who spent a lot of his life trying to get conservatives elected. And I'd like to see conservatives elected in this election as well. And that means you got to pull up on the controls, because this is being a campaign to date of controlled flight into terrain, as the saying goes. Basically steering, I think, the campaign into the side of the mountain. It's not good. There needs to be a pivot. There needs to be a change. I think I've got a unique perspective as somebody who's just run a campaign that was successful in Ontario, which will be the main battleground in this election, and run it in the same environment. And we learned a lot of things going into that and going through it. And I'm seeing some pretty big mistakes going on out there, which I'm sure we will talk about on this podcast and many others over the coming days. And I hope the trajectory of that is one of increasing optimism and enthusiasm for the Conservatives. But let's not underestimate the hill that there's there to climb. This has been the most spectacular reversal of fortunes, I think, in modern Canadian political history, by a lot. When you go from 25 up in Ontario to 15 down in the space of what is it, like 10 weeks? If you look at where they sort of stalled out and when it started to decline, it's a spectacular decline. And I got polling information almost 2 weeks ago, because we're in the field every week, showing that. And I had Nick repeat the poll and ask some more questions, because I didn't want to pull the fire alarm in the case that you're in the 19th out of the 20th out of the 19 out of 20 polls and something's off. And what came back was even worse than the initial poll was. When you're like 27 points down in Ottawa, that means your leader isn't winning a seat. It's bad. And in that same poll, Doug Ford's up. Poilievre's down. Carney's way up. Tony Crombie's down. Like, you don't see those kinds of trends typically in polling. Like, normally the provincial and federal parties move somewhat in tandem, like they're, or parallel. If the federal Liberals are up, that tends to, pull the provincial Liberals up, and vice versa. And, same for Conservatives, same for the NDP. When you see the federal parties moving in opposite directions of one another at the federal and provincial level, that is a unusual circumstance. And when those movements are that sharp, when you go from, as I say, like 25-point margins in your favor to 15-point margins against you, holy shit. Like I guess you could go in two different directions, David. You could wait until the campaign's over and write a pissy column or something about how you saw it all along, and use hindsight and de-risk the commentary by giving it then. Or if I think you actually believe in what you're, in the fortunes of your party, you pull the fucking fire alarm and try to get the people out of the building before it goes up in smoke. So, let's hope that those out in conservative war room land are paying some attention and pivoting. And I think, we'll talk, I guess, about, what we think we saw yesterday, but I think there's some signs that they're attempting to do that. And I hope they do it more, because at the end of the day, I want to see the Conservatives do well. And let's just all be honest adults here. That's not the track they were on.
Scott, some people might say that some people might say, well, why didn't Kory deliver that privately to the campaign management? But you and I know that that isn't always possible. In fact, we used this pod to plead with the Liberal Party for
like
months,
2
if not
years.
Yeah.
No question. You and I took a lot of water because of our sort of direct commentary about where we thought Trudeau was, and the approach going back to things that are very much technical and tactical, like the failure to advertise against Poilievre right out of the gate. That being said, I think you can safely assume, Kory, that your interventions have captured the attention of the Conservative war room. If my inbox is any indication, it's a lot of future news. Right? Yeah. CP24 will soon be reporting that the outspoken campaign manager of Doug Ford was found dead at the bottom of a Brampton stairwell, and police are treating the death as fucking suspicious. I was struck by something yesterday in that you have this, like, literally without precedent, because, prime ministers have had to drop off the campaign trail occasionally to become not a candidate, but prime minister, but really nothing like what we saw yesterday, what we saw in the Ontario campaign. And what I think we're going to see more of, we're going to see it again today with the premier's meeting Carney holds. But in the midst of all of that, in the midst of this gripping of development, auto tariffs, President Trump's hostility, Poilievre came out. We speculated what he might do, what he might say, how he might try to play into the moment yesterday. And as far as I can tell, he came out and he had 3 messages at his event that occurred midday. So there's plenty of time. Now, midday, our time is in BC, but still plenty of time for them to think about and calibrate their response in anticipation of Carney, knowing that Carney would be speaking with the full authority of prime minister. And they said 3 things. One, right? They said more or less the same thing about Trump, kind of a mailed in, hey, Donald Trump, bad, knock it off. 2, they ran an attack out of Poilievre's mouth, a recycled attack on Carney's holdings. Fair enough, the Bermuda play. I didn't think there was anything new in there. And if there was anything new in there, strange decision to do it on a day that's being burned through by tariffs. And then they moved on to a campaign of the day, announcement of the day thing on TSFAs. Fine announcement, raising TSAs. But seemed to me like they did not wish to acknowledge the reframing, the resetting that was occurring with Trump. And I then saw their incredibly impressive rally last night. And it really leads me to question, setting aside Kory's advice, public advice to the campaign, whether we are seeing a traditional air war, ground war collision occurring within their campaign. And they are saying, we believe that we can win this on ground war. We believe that we can demonstrate that being able to marshal 5,600 people in Surrey is an indication that we can connect and animate our voters. And we don't need to play your air war game, and we don't need to listen to your bullshit polling. We don't need to listen to your bullshit advice. So go fuck yourself. We are going to muscle this thing through. I'm just trying to understand the psychology, because I do not see
loser talk.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's what I think.
I think that
but
that path is so dangerous. And I mean, look, like, you can think back.
it also
20...
makes you be even more extreme, right? Like,
yes,
if
exactly,
that's the
because
decision,
you're
then you have to do
playing-
more to
Deb,
animate your
You're
base.
playing. Yeah, the horseshoe's really touched for those who think Deb and I are the same person. Look, yeah, I mean, I think just to build on what Scott is saying, look, I remember back in 2015, Harper was still pulling 1,000 people rallies like days before the election day. There can be a disconnection there in terms of who you're able to mobilize on the ground and what your actual vote is going to be. And I think, look, it makes sense to me that you would see large crowds. And I think there's a few things behind this. Number one, these are all pulling it like from larger regions. So it's not just that community. You're getting a pretty wide area of people coming in. It also squares with the fact that the Conservative vote, though it is dropping, is still more certain. It's more firm. People who want to vote Conservative, the ones that are sticking around, these are people who are more motivated. But the challenge is that what's happening right now, what we're seeing with Carney and the Liberals, is that they are mobilizing new voters. They're pulling people out who may have been inclined to sit on the couch this election, who may have been inclined to vote NDP. They're motivating whole new segments of voters. And so I don't think the math works to square those things. You can't stay out of the air war entirely. And I think I would share, the same critique that Scott did. I watched that press conference with a bit of disbelief. Number one, to go out with your message of the day before the prime minister when you know you're basically going to get booted out of the coverage anyway it's a choice. And then to continue to hammer on what has been identified as a weak message against Trump with weak language, and to circle back on an attack on Mark Carney, again, using language that is Trump-like. He's a globalist, so just playing in that pond again and again. And as for the TFSA announcement, my mother texted me laughing because she said, who do these guys think has $5,000 lying around as a senior? So like, I'm sure, and I know how those announcements get crafted. And those policies get developed. They seem very clever in the office, but it did not meet the moment. You had Carney out there talking as prime minister about the very serious impacts of these tariffs and what he's doing. And Singh and the NDP, for all they are in a very difficult situation, they were able to blow up their tour, go down to Windsor, go stand with workers, do the things that they needed to do to have the right visual and the right message on that day. And Poilievre was campaigning as though he was on a different planet. I think that what strikes me about the choices that the Conservative campaign is making is that these are not being foisted on them. They are choosing these things every day. They are choosing to continue down a path that is losing them votes.
It has come to my attention that I, Gary, the AI-generated voice who shills for air quotes media, am not popular with our listeners on YouTube. Or should I say one listener goes by an alias of cutlery and soiled clothing. Well, suck it, Fork Laundry. This one's for you. Actually, Forky, it's a proposal for everybody, and you're gonna like it. Advertise on air quotes pods, and you can get my nauseating voice off the air. Because your message will be read by one of our influential and human hosts, David Herle, Kate Hammer, or Mike McDonald. Or just record any piece of creative in your ad agency's fancy production studio and send it to us. Either way, you'll be reaching Canada's most influential listeners at this crucial intersection of politics, and who knows what the fuck happens next. Trump, a new prime minister, new economic policy, a whole new world order. Baby! My data points are tingling. Curse of Politics, the Hurly-Burly, and Hotel Pacifico have the ears of cabinet ministers, elected officials, and the political class, leading journalists, the C-suite, and tens of thousands of engaged Canadians. Prime influence time. So let's do Forky a solid. Email us at contact@airquotesmedia.com to get rid of Gary and get your message to the decision maker.
Let's just explore the language for 1 second, because I am so struck by knock it off. I mean, Carney is out there saying the relationship we have known with the United States all of our lives is over. And Poilievre is saying, President Trump, knock it off.
Yeah,
like, knock it off. That is a phrase that's not something he invented on the spot. That's what came to mind. This is something that they thought about, considered, probably focus tested. Kory, how would they have arrived at such a this is, as somebody said on Twitter, this is what you say to your kids in the back seat when they're fighting.
Yeah, I don't know. I doubt it was focus tested, right? Like, I think it was probably some people bouncing it around the comm shop in the war room. But here's the problem with it. It's the differential calibration and the language of the attack and intensity of the attack leveled at Carney versus Trump. And as long as you are attacking Carney in much more tough and vicious language, much rawer language than you are Trump, I think you're making a strategic error. But it's even, I would say in that, like, even having him continuing to be the attack dog for the campaign is a strategic error. Like
Yes.
at the
Yes.
core of what's
Yes.
at the core of what's going on here is they have a candidate with an unlikability problem. And it's like, well, if only we make him a bigger asshole, somehow people will like him. Seems to have been the theory operating in the war room. It's just I think it's a violation of just campaign fundamentals. Like, why do we have a Pierre Poilievre, right? Like, Pierre Poilievre cut his teeth playing that role for Stephen Harper, who also had a likability problem, but who was smart enough to understand the basics of campaigning. You don't have your principal candidate be their own attack dog. In fact, like, if I had a dime for every time Stephen Harper said, I won't be my own attack dog, and we, fired up Jason Kenney or Pierre Poilievre or someone else on the team to go out and deliver the attack, I wouldn't have to work today, because he said it all the time. And I don't think that Poilievre is comfortable trusting anyone else to do it, is probably part of it. I think they're having trouble getting anyone to get attention when they do try to do that, because he is so dominated their front line that they haven't developed a team of proxies and people further down the ranks that have enough profile and comm strength to actually do it. So, like, there are a whole bunch of chickens that are coming home to roost on this, but they got to get him sounding more positive. They've got to get the attacks in the mouths of others or in the ads as opposed to his mouth, and they have to calibrate the level of those attacks where they're more in sync with where the public is. Like, in case no one was listening there yesterday when I said it, Trump is the fucking villain in this storyline. And if you are hating other people more than you're hating on Trump, you're missing the mark. You're missing the mark. Like, and maybe you can hate more on your opponent, and but who is doing it? Who is communicating that? Your ads and proxies. You don't have your candidate out there, because the conclusion that people are drawing sort of subliminally from the effort is that you've got a big problem with Carney and a little problem with Trump, and you don't want that to be the conclusion. Other way around. Other way around.
All right, Jordan. Let's look at some other things for a bit. My bias, obviously, but I thought Carney was really strong yesterday.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah.
And when he put on the prime ministerial jacket and came out and said, "Here's the deal," I thought that was pretty compelling theater.
Absolutely. Yeah, I thought it was really solid. He struck the right tone, was strong, and I think that also measured, a lot of reassuring in there. And it's exactly what, if you look at the public opinion research, this is what Canadians are looking for right now in a moment of fear. And I think he captured that mantle very well. And he's going to get to do it again today in the meeting, and this is going to repeat next week. And on we go. And then we've eaten 2 weeks of the campaign, and the contrast between him and Poilievre is deepening even more. So I think he's using the moment very well. I think he's shown that he can capably switch between the prime minister hat and the campaigning hat, which I imagine is not easy to do, actually, if you're new in that role, but he's doing it. And I think we talked a little bit about this yesterday, that there was an opportunity for the other leaders to hug him a little bit in this, because you have to look like you want the prime minister to succeed in this moment. You have to look like you have a vested interest in him successfully standing up to Trump. And I think Poilievre clearly missed the moment on that.
I want to say one thing about Carney's. I'm going to say two things about Carney's thing yesterday, by the way, because there's a bunch of stuff I liked about it. I was overwhelmingly impressed with it, as you said, David, for all the same reasons that both of you articulated. And I don't want to make this just a giant glaze of everything he does. But I think it's particularly important. There was, even though we have to think about it from the prism of politics and all this, we are still in a really consequential campaign at a very, very serious and consequential moment. I thought he said something of historic, genuinely historic significance that will find its place into history books. And that's when he just plainly, almost, if you blinked, you missed it kind of moment, said, The relationship that we've enjoyed with the United States is over. Like there was no qualification of it. It wasn't like as long as President Trump is in office or whatever. I mean, it was a stark declaration of, this partnership, this post-war partnership that's existed in terms of territorial, security partnership, obviously our economic partnership, our trade partnership, it's over. And I think he's actually capturing there in plain flat language exactly what most Canadians think, which is the dawning realization that if the United States, it isn't just Trump, the United States can elect this fucking guy twice on this mandate, on this platform, on this promise, then we can't really, even when Trump is gone or other people come in or Democrats take the White House, you can't really trust that we're ever really going to be able to rely upon them in the same way, which takes me to the one note I have about his speech. You mentioned that he was reassuring, Jordan, and I think he was. But I do think he's got to just move that dial slightly, because when he starts to talk about what the consequences of no longer having that relationship with the United States are, he moves into the territory that we've been discussing, all parties have been discussing. Therefore, we need to fortify ourselves. We need to find other trade markets. We need to stand on our own. We need to make our own internal market one that's free. We have all these priorities we have to do. And I just think he needs to be a little more careful. He needs to edge. People are still digesting that reality, and it's an intimidating and scary reality, because that will be a wrenching set of changes that will wreak economic havoc on people and their livelihoods. And I don't think you want to sound like an eager engineer on that. I think you have to talk about it a little bit more tentatively, carefully. People want to hear more plan, less enthusiasm for the disruption. There was a little bit too much disruption, not enough plan, I think, I guess.
You mean a little bit of Build Back Better?
Yeah. It's just a one small note, because I do think I said it yesterday, like this people who are paying attention, and most people are paying close attention right now, have good reason to be scared shitless.
Kory, how do you think yesterday played out for Carney?
Look, I think well, in the sense that much like we experienced through good chunks of the provincial campaign, if you frame your ballot question in which the center of it is the Trump chaos and disruption and tariffs, every time you have to deal with an episode of that, you're dragging the campaign back onto your ballot question, and that's good, right? So like, it doesn't have to be good. Like we had a conservative campaign recently where Trump and tariffs and all of that was a good thing for the conservative campaign, because they framed the election around the main issue. But if you're going to be talking about TFSAs instead of Trump as your message event for the day, well, that's going to be a problem for you. So look, the Liberal campaign has been focused on the one big issue. And the Conservatives have spent the lead into the campaign and the front end of the campaign basically surrendering that ground. And so every time you're back on Trump, it's a good day for Carney right now. I'm hoping that we get to a place where that isn't the case. And but that means you got to contest the election on the main topic. And we saw some of that the night before, and some in the rally speech the other night. But you still got to dig through this whole collection of other issues and garbage in order to get to it.
So the counter thesis that's out there is that, so if Carney is unable to stop Trump, and if Carney and so Trump continues to put on tariffs, etc., Carney's unable to do anything about it, that Carney will have failed at the mission that he's being hired to do. And people by the end of the campaign will say, well, what's the point of Carney? He's not been able to stop Trump. And at the same time, he gets on the phone with Trump, and Trump, comes up with a nickname, maybe something that's regarding his size or something, and the nickname sticks. And so by the end of this, the whole house of cards is falling down around Carney.
Yeah, good luck.
I think that's how it
good
works.
Fucking luck. That's not how this plays, right? Like, people are not electing somebody to fix what's going on in the States. They're finding somebody that they want to represent them in what they think is going to be a never-ending fight as long as this guy's around. There's not some Trump whisperer who's going to fly down to Mar-a-Lago like a federal version of Danielle Smith and talk sweet nothings in his ear until he abandons the track he's on. Like that is not going to happen, and people are paying enough attention to see that's the case. So it's like that is a fucking fantasy that someone has dreamt up on X and is peddling in an effort to paper over the problems of what's going on.
I agree. Mistakes what the bar is, right? Like the bar is not fix the problem. The bar is be seen to be on the side of Canadians, be seen to be defending the Canadian interest, be seen to be there, ready to support people through this. It's not to fix it. I don't think anybody has an expectation that that's the case.
They're hiring a manager, not a magician. Nobody has any illusions about how to do it. The other thing that you have to keep in mind is the calendar. We've only got 4 weeks left, and we all know the truth of Trump, which is this thing isn't a straight line. It isn't like he's going to impose the tariffs on the 2nd of April, and then that's that. It's going to be a big clusterfuck of back and forth. Maybe there's some exemptions as we also put tariffs on every other country. You know what? If you come to us this way, that way, maybe they'll be changed. Like, it's not like this is a straight line event. It's going to zig and zag all over the goddamn place to April 28th and well after.
Yeah, it's going to be 4 years. Like, come on.
And maybe longer.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Boy, time flew by today. This was a fun conversation. Thank you all. We need to do a blessing or a curse. Who's got one?
I'll do a blessing. I'm gonna throw a blessing out.
Everyone looks expectantly at Kory.
I'm throwing a blessing out to all the people who messaged me yesterday, and I got to tell you, I thought I would get a lot more negativity than I did. I got a ton of lengthy and thoughtful messages. It almost felt like a bit of a therapy session of people who had, from very senior people from across the country in the conservative movement who were relating their stories of trying to talk some sense into folks and how that was received, how negatively it was received, how dismissively it was received. And man, oh man, the frustrations of trying to inject sanity into what has been a very closed loop of folks there is very broadly shared across the country, I can tell you, after yesterday.
Was there a nice note accompanying the horse's head in your bed?
I didn't get any horse's heads, but I'm sure one's on the way, Canada Post being what it is.
Why didn't you tell me you worked for Corleone, Tom?
Well, I'm on the 29th story. It's probably hard to drag that thing up the stairs, and there's cameras in the elevators. You got to be. Yeah,
it's a good thing you've got Nicole as your personal protective detail.
Right.
Jordan, you got a blessing or a curse?
Yeah, I do. Actually, I've got one of each because I think I want to send a blessing out. Yesterday, I think the NDP campaign did something they need to do more of. They were
get on TV.
Get on TV, yes, but no, get on TV. No, they got good headlines yesterday. It was on the topic of the day. The visuals were good. The topic was good. Part of the challenge that the NDP has in this campaign, it is like a knife fight to just get into the story. And so every single time that they get into the story, it has to be crystal clear what their core message is. Yesterday they are there standing for Canadian workers. They are going to fight with their lives to defend those jobs. It was like chef's kiss. That was great. More of that. And then the flip side of that coin is a little curse going out to the United Auto Workers in the United States. Fuck you guys for endorsing these tariffs. Where is your sense of solidarity? You guys actually have some members in Canada who are going to be hurt by this. And I think that a lot of workers on both sides of the border have a right to expect better.
Hey, doesn't Bob White deserve a shout out here? He's the guy that separated the Canadian auto workers from the American.
Can you imagine if that had not happened? And I guess, in that basket, a shout out goes to Lana Payne as well, who's doing God's work on this stuff right now. So I guess two blessings and a curse then from me today.
Excellent. Scott?
My blessing goes to Jason Kenney, former premier of Alberta. And, we haven't really had a chance to get to Danielle Smith's foray into Florida, sitting with Ben Shapiro in a still really kind of undisclosed event that we don't really know what in Christ she said. We'll find out whenever their pods are released and so on and so forth, or what she's up to beyond that, what other meetings she's doing. But Jason Kenney came out quite categorically and quite surprisingly for a former premier of Alberta, especially a conservative one, saying, listen, when Mark Carney says everything should be on the table, that obviously is an indirect reference to also our energy. If that's the card we need to play, we have to hold it at least in our hand to threaten the Americans. He endorsed that approach. He more or less defined that as how you negotiate from a position of strength. And he preemptively condemned anyone that would condemn that positioning, which is a pretty clear shot at Danielle Smith and Poilievre. And I think this debate is going to very quickly move toward that. And we're going to find that it becomes a dividing line in the international conversation. And I thought it was an important intervention.
An interesting one from a number of respects.
There might be some politics there.
Yeah, might be some foreshadowing. My blessing goes out to Mark Carney, who on the moment of greatest pressure and scrutiny on him since he entered politics, delivered his best performance. And that was a big day for the campaign yesterday, I think, and it was impressive. All right.
You love Mark Carney. If Mark Carney was a girl, you would kiss him and marry him. You love him.
I'm going to take him up behind the cubicle, the portable, and get him pregnant. That's what I want.
Liz Lemon. I'm going to make you pregnant.
Well, and with that, our listeners to go scrub their brains.
Have a great weekend, you three. Thank you to all of our listeners. Thank you to Enbridge for their sponsorship of the polling, and to Polera for doing the polling. And we'll see you all Monday with a whole new set of things to talk about, I'm sure. In the meantime, take care of yourselves.